What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you're checking out Podcasting Business School, the show where I teach podcasters how to love their podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. And today, I've got a very special guest on a very special topic that we have never covered in all almost 400 episodes of the show: how to turn your podcast into a book. And I've brought a writing specialist and fellow pod pal, part of the Podfest pod fam. Elikqitie is in the house. Elikqitie, how's it going?
Hey, it's going, Adam. How are you doing today?
Fired
Excited
up.
to be here.
Well, like we are in touch quite a bit, and we hang out at Podfest, and we collaborate. And you sent me an email like, hey, and you kind of put this topic out there, and it was so weird because I keep an Evernote file of what I call my my podcast like brainstorming zone and kind of idea dump episode ideas. So one of the topics was how to create a book out of a podcast, and I was like, wow, perfect. Let's do this. So
I knew that because I broke into your Evernote account and found that idea.
So for everybody that's trying to be a guest on my show, that's how you pitch it. You read my mind and you know exactly what I put in my Evernote idea bank, and you like word for word know the topic, pitch it to me, and you're in. And you also have to know me and hang out with, like, we've known each other for like 4 or 5 years, I feel like, at this point. So
5 years. Yeah, because we met at Podfest in 2018.
Yeah. So put in your time. It's worth it.
After 5 years, you get to be on Adam's show.
5 years of friendship and vetting, then you get to be on the show. All right. So I'm really excited about this topic because I feel like there's potential here. I feel like I'm not an author, writing expert in any way, shape, or form. That's why I've never talked about this, but I know there's some advantages to doing this. So before we even get into that, like, what's your background? Give us a little bit of your background as a writer, writing coach, podcaster, and how it all fits together.
Yeah. So I started my writing business like 5-6 years ago now. And before I was a writer, I taught science and coding to middle school students all day. So I literally took care of like 213-year-olds all day, which was slightly stressful, never the same day of work day to day. But I decided I needed to do something a lot less stressful with my life. And I decided I wanted to go into writing. And so when I originally got into writing, I got into travel writing. But then when COVID hit, I lost almost all of my clients that March of 2020. So I pivoted and started doing more SEO, web writing, and ghost writing. And right now I mostly do ghost writing, which is my favorite thing to do. I really love to write. And I typically on a day between my work and my client work, I write between 2,000 and 8,000 words a day. So if you want to get really good at writing, write 2,000 to 8,000 words a day. Like I can see even just last year, the difference between last year and this year it's really significant because the more I write, the better I get at it. And so, and I really love to write. And apparently I didn't know this when I first started professionally writing, but I write really fast. So I can typically write anywhere between 1,000 and 1,400 words per hour. And I rarely get writer's block. Like everybody's like, how do you deal with writer's block? I'm like, I don't get it. So I can't give you any help with that. But I can tell you, like, there's certain practices you can do to help like get new ideas and stuff like that. But I really love to write, and I really enjoy the process of writing because it's just really, it's very calming, and I love being in that creative zone, and I love creating new things and creating stories and things like that. So that's kind of like my background in a nutshell.
All right. So 2,000 words. Like, how many pages on an average size book is that? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. So like if you're looking at a Google Doc, because a lot of people are familiar with Google Docs. So a 2,000 words would be about 4 pages.
Okay. Cool. So that helps me put it in perspective because, it's kind of like when somebody gives you a stat and like, that's like 12 football fields or whatever. They're like, okay, now I know what that looks like. All right. So that's impressive. Like, you are cranking out some serious writing. And I mean, content creation is content creation. You have that saw sharpened with your writing, your blogging, your emailing, your ghostwriting, and your podcasting. And you've been podcasting for quite a while now, and you've had multiple shows. So I love bringing podcasters on to the show to talk about certain niche topics like this from a podcaster's perspective. So I could have brought on some people who are like, regular, just normal old writing coaches or whatever, but you are a podcaster that can show us how to transform this content that we already have into an actual book. So what's the first thing we need to know? Actually, what's the why behind this? What are some of the advantages of doing this? Like, why should we even consider turning our podcast into a book?
Yeah. So the number one reason you want to write a book and author a book is because it shows that you're the expert in the field. And although a podcast does that as well, a book takes it a step further because there's a stat out there that 80% of people who want to write a book never do. So just actually writing the book puts you in the top 20%. And then out of that 20%, only a very small fraction actually publish their book. So they may write it, but they may not put it out there. And so not only does it position you as an expert in your field, it really separates you from a lot of other people. And especially if you're a speaker, if you don't have a book, getting a book will A, get you more speaking gigs, and B, get you better paid speaking gigs. So if you're a speaker, having a book on your topic that you speak on is a complete no-brainer.
Okay. And I agree with those statements wholeheartedly. Like, I'm all about expert positioning. I talk about it. That's probably the most mentioned word on my podcast, that and SEO. And then the phrase, you need to change the name of your podcast. So it's really, really important. And you're kind of dipping your toes in different marketing waters there with a book. And, book consumers and podcast consumers are not always the same person. It's like YouTube consumers and audio consumers aren't the same person. So you can kind of get a new market. And there is some cross section there, or maybe you pick up some new listeners, or some of your listeners become readers. And I really like this idea. Now, the key for me is the how to efficiently do this, because back in my health podcasting days, I did write a book and I launched it on Amazon, and it took me forever and it was not good. And I got so tired that I didn't even market it. That's why no one knows that I even have a book, because I was like, I'm done with it. Who cares?
Know you had a book. Now I'm going to look it up.
See? So I'm not even going to mention the name of it because it's terrible. It's about health and fitness. And, I said I wrote a book, big, ugly green cover. This tells you my book writing experience. I did the book. I mean, it's good content, whatever. And I was like, how do I really market this thing? And I look at my bookshelf and I go, you know what? I don't have any green books. So I'm like, I'm going to make the book green, and that's going to make it stand out, and it's going to sell like hotcakes. That was my marketing strategy. Make a bright green book, and nothing else would matter. People would just flock to it. Not the case. So
I have to say your reasoning was sound. Your reasoning was sound. I will give you A+ for sound reasoning. But yes. Yeah, bright green book covers just generally don't work.
There we go. All right. So what's the first step? We're like, okay, I want to explore the idea of transforming a podcast into a book. Where do we start?
Okay. So the first place you need to start is you need to absolutely be super passionate about your podcast, your title, your what you do for podcasting. If you're not super passionate about it, and I would say don't even consider writing a book until you're at least 25 episodes in, because you don't want to just start a podcast and then you get tired of podcasting and you pod fade, and then now you have this book half written. So that would be the first thing is, make sure you're you've got your podcasting process down, you're well into it, you're going to continue with it. That's step one. Step two is you want to figure out what maybe your podcast, even if your podcast is niche, you might want to focus on a specific aspect of your podcast. So you need to figure out your topic. What topic are you going to write about? Is it going to be for my Travel Gluten-Free podcast? My book was really easy. It was called The Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free. So for mine, it was really easy just to put the guide to in front of my podcast name, but yours might be a little different. So you need to figure out what subject or niche, or maybe sub niche of your podcast you're going to do for a topic. Now, this does not mean you have to pick the title. Everybody gets so fixated on, I have to pick the perfect title, being as I'm writing my book. No, the time you need the title is towards the end of your book, when you're going to go make your book cover. That's when you absolutely need the title, but you don't need it in the beginning, but you do need to pick out your idea. And then the next step after you have the idea for your book is to make a mind map. And the reason I absolutely love mind maps is, well, because I grew up in a Catholic school and they taught us to do linear outlines. Like I could have done it in my sleep. I think I have nightmares about it at this point, but that's reason one. Reason two, the other reason why I love a mind map is because I'm not a linear thinker. Like probably a lot of creatives, we think like broad, reaching out different things and getting different ideas. And so a mind map is so much easier to put your content together because you can just like make little circles around. If you don't know what a mind map is, it's generally like you put a circle in the middle and you put your main idea there. And then you make little branches and then you make little circles on the end of those branches. And then you put your little sub ideas in there and those are your chapters. And then you put branches off your chapters and that's the content in your chapters. And you can get really detailed with it. And it's really nice because it's more flexible than a regular linear outline. And I love that too. And the other reason I love mind maps is because it's very visual and I'm a very visual person, as so are a lot of creators. And so one of the things that you definitely need to know about your book that a lot of people make the mistake about is like, they're like, oh, I'm just going to take my episodes and then plop them into a book, make them chapters, and here's my book. And you don't want to do that unless there is one exception to that. So one of my friends, I think you know Emily Prokop, she has a podcast called The Story Behind. And she had a book publisher come to her because they wanted to publish her podcast as a book. Now for hers, that worked because each was an individual story that was not related to another chapter. So if you have something like that, taking your podcast episodes and plopping them into a book would work, but you do need to still do some rewriting and re-editing because how we speak is different than how we read in a book. So you still will need to edit, but you don't need to, you wouldn't need to like move things around. But if it's like what like mine was, the Guide to Traveling Gluten-Free, I couldn't just take episodes and plop them into chapters. So what I did was I created my mind map with my mind map outline of my book. And then I took the episodes that fit in those chapters, transcribed them and put them into those chapters and then rewrote them in book format. And then there were some chapters where I had to write all original copy because I didn't have podcast episodes on that. Another thing you can do, which is one of my ghostwriting clients are doing right now, is we have her whole thing mind mapped and outlined, and she's actually making podcast episodes for her chapters that fit into her book. So she's reverse engineering her podcast to fit into her ghostwriting, in the ghostwriting that I'm doing for her book. So that's another way that you can do it. But Don't just copy and paste because that's what's known as a blog book in the writing community. And that's not going to have good flow. And people are gonna be like, what, like, where is this going? And so you definitely can use your podcast content, but don't just copy and paste it.
Okay. Because that was where I was going. Number one, I'm like, the most effective way to do this is definitely transcribe an episode and slap that baby in there. Chapter 1 done. But that makes sense. So to me, I'm like, mind map it, figure out the content, first figure out the through line. I really like the idea of like sub niche topics for somebody like me. I've got almost 400 episodes. Like I could have a book about podcast monetization for service providers like that. It could be that like niche. And then we go through all the different things or, download growth specific or audience engagement specific books. Like that's something that I could definitely see myself doing because I have so much content, so many episodes.
And so do you want a really good monetization idea, Adam?
Of course. I love monetization ideas.
I've completely baited you with the monetization for verbiage. Okay. So for somebody like you who has 400 episodes and a lot of different little niches, you can come out with a series of small 100-page books and say like, hey, here's this one, monetization of this, like, get signed up on my email list to find out when the next one's going to be published. And then somebody could even sign up for a membership. And as you're publishing them on this like closed off membership space, they would have first access to your series of books.
Ooh, it's like you read my mind again. Like you've hacked into my Evernote files and now you've read my mind because the question I was getting ready to spit out is like, what's the minimum allowable pages for like a legit book? Like what should we actually shoot for? I mean, is a 100-page book, is that okay? Like, is that, or is that like wimpy book mode? I don't know. Like what's acceptable there?
So a lot of people get hung up on pages. And I think it's because we are so trained in school to be like, this essay has to be 5,000 words, and we're so hooked on that. And it's actually, so what I tell people, The number of pages don't necessarily matter. But here are some guidelines that you want to know if you are deciding to take your podcast and turn it into a book. One is that the minimum number of words you need to have to publish a book on Amazon is 2,500, which is basically like a super long blog. That's super easy. However, if you want a book that has a spine, which is, if you're not familiar with the spine, is it's that little side that shows your title, which is really optimal because most people will pass over books that don't have spines. That has to be 100 pages. Now, that 100 pages depends on the size of your font, if you have pictures, and how you're formatting it, or how your book formatter is formatting your book for you. And so but if you want a book with a spine, it needs to be 100 pages. You can also like have like a 90-page book with like 10 pages of like, hey, here's like, review, or like put your ideas down here. So you can make it kind of like a book/workbook to get it to that 100 pages. So it doesn't have to be 100 pages of words, but it does have to be 100 pages. And the smaller you make the book, the less words you need to fill up to 100 pages. So there are some tricks of the trade you can get to make a smaller book with a less content, get to 100 pages to have that spine.
So you're talking about like the actual physical size, like the dimensions of the book.
Yes.
What are some thoughts there? What's working? What's not working? What are best practices with the actual physical size of the book?
So a typical average book size is like 5 by 8, basically. So like a travel guide size, I guess, would be like a typical size. Although you can make your book smaller, you can make your book bigger. But if you want to do that 100-page with a spine, if you want to make your book bigger as far as size wise, like 8 by 11 or whatever, then you'll need more content to make it to that 100 pages so you can have the spine for your book. So what you really need to decide is the spine that important to you? For me, it is, because I want that my title on the side, because people are more likely to pick it up.
Okay. You're answering all the questions, Elikqitie. That's why I knew you were going to deliver. All right. What are your thoughts on doing this as kind of like a mini funnel into like an evergreen course or something? Like if I was to create an evergreen course on podcast rebranding and I wrote a book all about podcast rebranding and funneled it into this course, I mean, you think that's worth the effort?
Yeah. So here's the deal. So if you write a book that's funneled into a course, you don't have to publish it through Amazon. So that's more of just like an ebook, and you can create those really easily on Canva, which I do. And I've got like 7 lead magnets, and all of them are ebooks that I've created on Canva. So for something like that, you can make your own book, and you don't have to publish it with an ISBN number. So publishing it with an ISBN number through Amazon makes it its own book with its own ISBN number that people can just buy on its own. And you can do that through a funnel. So if you have like on your email funnel, and like one of the last emails is like, hey, or the middle email is like, hey, here's my book, you can buy my book, and then put a link to your Amazon, you can do that. Or the other thing you can do is you can just sell your book privately as an ebook you made through Canva somewhere in your funnel, or put it on like they send it to someone as a thank you gift for like buying your online course. Or I mean, like there's a million ways you can use that ebook that you've made yourself that doesn't have an ISBN number on it.
Okay. That totally makes sense. Now, before we take that next leap into the world of Amazon, publishing and stuff like that, have we missed anything, or do we skip anything from the actual content creation basics, or are we good there?
Yeah. So there's a couple things you want to know with the content creation for making a book. Was like, you want to make sure that you have like a good amount of time to write your book, whether if that's every day, like get into a good writing practice habit. I actually, my main writing is like when I'm traveling, and I'll just sit down for like 8 hours a day and write, and I can get like a whole book done in a week, which is what I did last November. So for me, I just like to go somewhere else and just sit down and write, so I don't have the distractions of home. So you want to get into a good writing practice. The other thing you want to know too is that if you decide to publish on Amazon, which most people do, I would suggest not using the Amazon ISBN, because the Amazon ISBN, Amazon owns the rights to where you can put your book. So you can only publish it on Amazon, and you can't purchase like hard copies of your book if you want to make it a hard copy, and sell it like at an event or a speaker event. So if you want to sell your own book, you will need to buy your own ISBN, and that's really easy. You just need to go to myidentifiers.com. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think, oh, I can just get an Amazon ISBN, order my book and sell it. And legally, you're not allowed to do that. And if they catch you, they will close your whole account down, and then you're royally screwed. So I would say don't try it. Just get your own ISBN. A set of 10 is like $200, because you'll also need a separate ISBN for like one for your audiobook. You'll need a different ISBN for your paperback, and you'll need a different ISBN for your ebook on Amazon.
Okay. And so once you get that in, if you are going to, load it up inside of Amazon, there's just something that's like, I brought my own ISBN to the party. Here it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Now, I remember back in the day when I did my book, the most confusing part was getting that sucker up onto Amazon and making it like look right. And I did a lot of copying and pasting, and it made my brain hurt every single day that I did it. And then I didn't put any pictures into things. Like, I can't even do that right now. So what are best practices if we're like, all right, we're going to launch this thing on Amazon? Where do we start, and how do we make this as easy as possible?
Yeah. So the issue you had a problem with, which is a lot of people don't realize when they get on Amazon, is book formatting. And so I do professional book formatting for people, or you can buy a program like Vellum or Atticus, and both of those you can learn how to format your own book on. And so the book formatting, what it does is it makes it so that like your words and your verbiage are neatly centered on the page, and your pictures are not pixelated, and everything looks like it's how it's supposed to be in the book. And so a lot of people don't know that. So they get to Amazon and they're like, they upload their cover, like, why does this look so weird? It's because it's not formatted correctly. And the other thing is you need to get a book template for your cover, a cover template based on the size of your book. So this is where the size matters in your book. And that you need to know the size of your book before you format it, because it's going to tell you based on your font and everything, how many pages it's going to end up being total with all of your content, like your copyright page and everything, and your book cover. So that's another important thing. So you want to make sure that you have it formatted correctly. You've got your book cover formatted correctly before you upload it onto Amazon.
Okay. Now, is it a thing to just type the book inside of Amazon? Like, is that way it's already in the correct format, or am I just making that up?
I don't know if that's a thing, but if it was, I still wouldn't do it.
Okay.
And the reason is because when I write my book, what I do is I make each chapter its own separate single Google Doc. And the reason I do that is because when you're writing a book, you're almost always going to change chapters around or move something around. And it is so much easier to change your chapters around when each chapter is on its own separate Google Doc than having everything on one Google Doc or one Word document, because then you have to scroll through things, and then you might mess up and accidentally delete stuff. And and you could do that on a single Google Doc, but it's much easier to do that if you have like a 200-page one document. Now, eventually you're going to have to combine all of those into your one book. But when you're writing your book, in the process, it is so much easier to have each chapter on its own page. And the other thing I tell people too is you don't want to write your content in the program that you're publishing it on, because you can repurpose that content, but you can't repurpose it. It's very hard to repurpose it if it's on another platform. You want to make sure that's somewhere you have access to it, easy access to it, so that you can repurpose it when you do your book marketing or your promotion or whatever else you're doing.
Okay. This is really making sense. So with the Amazon publishing system, like, what do people really need to know about this as far as like where can we get in trouble? You already mentioned like the ISBN. Is there anywhere else where people are really the formatting, we're screwing that up? Any other major potholes in the road of Amazon publishing that we need to know about?
The one other one that people really don't know about is that the keywords for your ebook and your print book can be different. And that sounds bizarre, but it is absolutely true. So there is a tool, and it's called Publisher's Rocket. And you want to get that if you are publishing a book on Amazon, because what you do is you literally put in your title of your book or your even your idea of your book, and it will literally tell you all of the books that are on Amazon, how many people have bought them, how popular they are, and what are the chances of you getting to like a top bestseller on Amazon. So if you are planning on doing anything on Amazon, definitely get Publisher Rocket. Then you can come, and you can also make lists of like ebook keywords and paperback keywords. You can export them. You can export all the data that you're like, I mean, you can literally go down like the biggest book data rabbit hole on Publisher Rocket. It is like one of the best programs if you're publishing a book on Amazon.
Nice. So with you now, you got me thinking about launch mode a little bit here. What you mentioned ebooks, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of people use this strategy where they launch the ebook first for like $1, and then they get a whole bunch of sales, and then they get Amazon bestseller status, and then they launch the actual paperback a few weeks later. Do you know anything about this? What kind of strategies are there out there, and what do you recommend?
Yeah. So I'm not big on the marketing strategy part, but one of the things I do know is you definitely want to start marketing your book 3 months ahead of your, like ideally, like a lot of people don't do that, but you want to start marketing your book 3 months ahead of time to build up the thing. And then a lot of people do the pre-orders. The only problem with somebody pre-ordering your book is they can't leave you a review when they're pre-ordering. So some people don't like to do pre-orders because they don't get as many reviews. And so that's something to consider, like, if you want to do that. But the book, the funny thing is, like in the writer circles, we always say like, hey, writing the book is the easy part because the hard part is doing all the marketing afterward. Like you have to constantly like pound the pavement to market your book once you have it published. And so my I guess advice for marketing is be prepared to be the long haul for marketing if you want your book to sell really well, and that make sure you have an email list set up already. I would not even think about writing a book unless I had an email list set up so that you can communicate with your followers like, hey, this is my book, please spread the word, share this email. And then make sure you have some type of a plan set up to market your book for the long term, because marketing is really challenging. And literally, like the second you stop marketing your book, you'll watch your sales drop off. So it just depends on like how dedicated you are to marketing your book, or maybe you just want to put your book out there to be seen as an expert, and you're not really worried about selling a lot of copies. That's another thing too, is that a lot of people don't realize that publishing a book isn't going to make you a millionaire. Usually, sometimes it happens, but that has to be like the perfect storm of, your opportunities coming together. But it can happen, but typically it doesn't. So one of the things that you want to do is make sure that, whatever money you're putting into that book, you are most likely going to take a year to recuperate it at a minimum. So keep that in mind when you're writing your book and putting it out there.
Any thoughts on pricing your book?
Yeah. So one of the weird things that happened to me with Amazon is with my guide to traveling gluten-free. So I put it at $14.95 because I thought I looked at all my competitors, saw what they were, and there really weren't that many in my space, or any at all that actually like looked professional at a minimum. And so I put it up $14.95, and it's like, sells a few books a month. And I haven't really been promoting it because I actually put it out during COVID because I wasn't planning on COVID happening. So anyway, I put it out during COVID. So I hadn't done a lot of promotion, but I'd sell a few every month. And all of a sudden, like, it was like right after COVID ended and my sales dropped off. And I was like, this is really weird. Like, what happened? So I went into my Amazon account and found out that Amazon has this thing where if they think you're trying to undersell everybody by making your book charging way less for your book than your competitors, they will actually jack up the price of your book. So what happened was there was a lot of gluten-free cookbooks on the market for like $25. So they jacked up the price of my book from $14.95 to $25, and I wasn't selling it. And that makes sense for a cookbook, because a cookbook, you put a lot more work into it, has recipes, recipe development. Like there's a lot of work that goes into a recipe book. But for my guide, like that's not a good price point. And so I had to go on and put in a ticket and all that stuff. So yeah.
Oh man, Amazon. Is there another platform that we should be considering for self-publishing other than
I
Amazon?
wish. Amazon sells 80% of the books out there. So yes, there are others you can consider. And the one thing I will tell you is that if you want to put your book in a store, it's probably not going to sell a lot of copies, but it is cool to have your book in a store. That it's kind of like the coolness factor. So if you want to put it in the store, the main reason you should be putting it in there is just the coolness factor of having a book in the store.
Now, I'm definitely not like this, but I know some of our listeners may be like this, where they're like, they're brand building and they're, kind of building a name for themselves, and they may eventually want to score like a book deal. I mean, is it possible to go the Amazon publishing route, kind of get your name out there, and eventually you leverage that to get a book deal? Or how do book deals even happen?
Yeah. So if you want to get a book deal with a publisher, I would definitely highly recommend self-publishing your first book because it can take 3 to 5 years to get that deal with a publisher. And you're writing lots and lots of letters to publishers. And the thing that people don't know is that a lot of publishers won't even give you money for advertising, and they won't even consider you for publishing unless you have 10,000 people on your email list, because they want to know that you have the marketing capability to make them money. So if you want to do, I mean, literally the only reason to get a book publisher in today's age is just because you want to say, hey, this publisher picked up my book. But you really don't need it to have a successful book. You just need to have excellent content, deliver value, have a professional looking cover, have it professionally formatted, and make sure you get a professional editor too. And if you have all those things and you do a good job marketing, you'll have a great book. Like, that's pretty much all there is to it. Check off that box.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's very exciting. I know there are people out there that are like, yeah, that's my goal. I want to, that's the type of person that wants to be like a TEDx speaker and get a book deal and like they're passionate about that. So I knew you'd have an answer for us there as well. Now, I don't know if you've considered this or not, but the whole time we've been talking for the last half an hour, I'm like, man, Elikqitie needs to have a workshop just for podcasters that want to turn their show into a book. So if you haven't created that offer yet, please do, and allow me to promote it. And, let's make some magic happen there, because I know that I'm not the only podcaster that's thinking like, wow, it'd be really nice to have Elikqitie kind of walking me through this thing as I was doing it. So that is something that I would love to be a part of and help promote. So just planting that seed for you there, Elikqitie.
Heck yeah. I love gardening. Gardening is great.
Yes. All right. Now, outside of that, what if somebody does want to hire you as a ghostwriter or a writing coach or whatever? How does that all work?
Yeah. So I have a couple different ways you can do that. So if you have content and you have a mind map and you've got like a lot of the content already either transcribed or done, you can say, hey, Elikqitie, I've got X amount of words. Here's my content, and I can give you a project price for it. Or the other option, which most of my clients go for, is I have a book coaching / ghostwriting where we meet on a regular basis, either every week or every other week. And then I say like, hey, what have you got done in your book? And then you show me, and then I make suggestions on what you should be writing or doing next. And then you do those. And then I work on your content in that week, whatever time we're not meeting. And then we reconvene, get back together. And then we're like, okay, hey, where are you at? This is where I'm at. This is what I did for you the past couple of weeks. And then do it all over. And we keep doing that until your book is finished. And so that really helps a lot of people, because the number one reason people don't publish their book is because they feel it's not good enough, or they feel like, oh, nobody wants to read my book. And it's surprising how the really great content that comes out of people, they just need to believe in themselves and like just stick their neck out there and put it out there and not worry about what the world has to say about it.
Well said. I feel like there's definitely a connection with that and launching a podcast, because I consult on a lot of launches, and it's the imposter syndrome. People are like,
yep.
I just really don't think people are going to want to listen to what I had to say. And it's exactly what you just said about publishing a book.
But the thing is like, how do you know if people aren't going to want to listen to it if you don't even put it out there?
Exactly. Exactly, pod pals. So, no, I think that if you all need a little bit of help, Elikqitie is somebody I've known for a long time. I trust her. She's really good at what she does. And hopefully we can get a little workshop cooking here, something where she can help a few of us out together. So Elikqitie, you delivered on this topic as I knew that you would. And I just want to say thanks for being my friend, being my pod pal. You're always somebody that brings positive energy. I love hanging out at Podfest, but obviously, bringing your knowledge and adding that value to my show, it's much appreciated.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'd be glad to come back and talk more about writing.
All right, pod pals. Hopefully we got some ideas cooking and you're ready to transform your show into a book, I think I'm gonna make a run at this. So, keep your eyes on that Amazon, keep your eyes on my email, and let's see what we can cook up here. So, hopefully you are ready to take some action on this, and I am ready to send you out into the world, wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. I will see you next time.